I'm Jack,
And I'm Brenden,
and we're coming to you from beyond the terrarium.
where DIY meets naturalistic reptile keeping.
Enjoy. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Terrarium. This is episode number 9. We appreciate you guys tuning back in. It is a Monday when we're recording this, and everyone has had Monday of all Mondays. So we're getting it in. It's going to be a good episode. I'm excited about this one. Before we introduce the guest, Brenden, every week, man, we got to do it. How are the cat legs?
They are still rocking, man. No changes from last week.
No changes. That's the best update.
Which is good. Yeah, no change is a good change, right?
Yeah.
They're
Have you
still
weighed
rocking.
them at all? Like, have they changed weight or anything?
Dude, I barely look at them. I'm not picking those things
fair.
up. There ain't no way.
That's fair.
They're what is today's date? The 15th. So we're almost 2 months in.
Nice.
At this point. February 22nd. So
they're rocking.
Yeah, I'm hoping she lays another clutch soon, man. But she doesn't look like she's going to. So I don't know what the fuck's going on. But
it's gonna happen, man.
We're taking it one day at a time.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
Brenden, you want to go ahead and introduce our guest?
Yeah, man. So originally, this is like the leopard gecko guy. He's like, the one guy who like accepted me into the leopard gecko groups is like when I first got into this shit. So we kind of become buddies over the past few months. But this is Mr. Thomas Probst of Tucson's Finest Leos and Tucson's Finest Dragons, right? Is that's the page?
Yes, sir.
It's the man. What's
Welcome
going on, dude?
Not much, guys. I'm happy to be here. I'm super excited. And obviously, like Brenden said, we've been buddies for a long time. And when he hit me up to do this, I was like, of course, bro. So I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming on, man. We're stoked to talk to you about a bunch of different things. I think we've got a good list of topics down to go over and everything. So I'm really stoked to have you on.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one, man. I'm stoked to talk Abronia. I've never actually talked to anybody about Abronia before.
Yeah. We're hitting all the rare lizard species, man. Like the first guest episode we had was Skylar with peach throats, and then blue trees, and then Polycris, and now Abronia.
Yeah, man, we're hitting all the good ones.
The most niche lizard podcast around is what's happening here.
I'm digging it, man. I'm all for the lizards, so I'm there for it.
Yeah, I got to be careful because I'm going to start becoming a lizard guy, and that's not going to be good for me at all. It hasn't happened yet, but we're close.
Oh, it's going to happen though. I'm gonna get you there. Give me a few more months with this podcast, and you'll be having cat geckos and all kinds of stuff.
I don't know, man.
Heck yeah.
All right.
You got to have at least one, man.
Yeah, at least one gecko for sure.
Yeah. I'm just gonna send you a box one day.
No.
I got your address.
I don't know if my girlfriend. I didn't pay for them, I swear.
Right? They were free. That's what buddies are for, right?
That's what we got to say, right? It was free. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know, I swear.
I say that so many times.
He just said I could have it.
My thing's always like, oh, well, he says he's just going to send me a box. All I have to do is pay shipping. It's fine. Then I just get the eye roll and walk away. So she knows.
Oh man,
she knows how it goes. Oh, man. But no, I guess to start here, man. I guess just if you want to do like a short little intro to you and what you do, and then we can start talking some Abronia.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, so like Brenden said, my name's Thomas. I've been breeding and keeping reptiles since I was 10 years old. Like most beginners, probably back in that era, my hobby started out of a Petco, you know what I mean? And that Petco gecko eventually led me to going on YouTube and getting books and doing all types of research and just evolving myself, right? And for a little while when I was younger, I stepped out of it because, around the high school time, sports, things like that, life gets busy. It's really hard to breed and take care of reptiles, things like that. So I stepped away from it for a good 4 to 5 years. And then when I turned 18, I was one of those that I moved out, as quick as I could, just because I wanted that freedom of being able to do whatever I wanted and having whatever I wanted. And that's when I picked up my reptile hobby again. And it just kind of evolved from there. I went and started making social media back in 2020 because I'd never really done that before as a kid, obviously. And it's just kind of grown from there. Obviously, like you said, I've been breeding and keeping leopard geckos. That's what I started with. And I successfully bred my first leopard geckos back in 2010. So I've been doing it for quite some time. And it's just kind of led into other things. Personally, I've always enjoyed keeping things that are a little bit more intellectual and stuff that pays attention to you just as much as you pay attention to it. You know what I mean? So like monitor lizards have always been a huge fascination for me. And, Abronia kind of became that one as well, too. The first time I'd ever seen them in person was in 2021. My buddy Bubba's Geckos and Small World Reptiles, Angelo, they came down here to Tucson to vend and, hang out with me and stuff. And they brought a couple of their Abronia just to kind of put on display. And I remember we were back at the hotel room and I got to hold them and check them out and stuff. And it just kind of carried on from there. So I got to give a lot of credit to those guys for, putting one in my hands for the first time, because that's where the obsession really just took off.
It's always how it goes too, man. It's like all it takes is for someone to be like, hey, hold this. And then you hold it and it's like, oh shit, I need like 20 of these things.
Literally, man. And, a huge part of it too, I couldn't even believe I was honestly holding one at the time. I was like, oh my God, this thing is so like, it was like the grail for me, right? I was so beyond excited. I was at a loss for words for it, but yeah. Super stoked to be working with them now. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's what I told Brenden when we were talking about having you on. It's like Abronia are one of those species for me that like, I feel like, and this is probably true for a lot of people, but like everyone knows Abronia are cool. Like everyone has seen, or, if you're in the reptile hobby, like you've definitely seen Abronia and they're cool. They're one of those things that I just haven't researched because I know like as soon as I start researching them, it's going to be game over and I'm going to spend way too much money on these things and have a whole separate room and, everything that we're going to talk about that you do with them. So it's like I've stayed away from them, but I'm sure if somebody put one in my hands, like it'd be game over, man. Because they're dragons. They really are.
Oh, definitely. And, like I was saying, as far as the intellectual capability, man, the way that these things like pay attention to you, it's so much like the monitors. You know what I mean? You could do something when you're feeding that bothers one of them just enough to where they might not want to take a bug off the tongs from you for a couple of weeks just because that little thing that you did was that significant to them. You know what I mean? They're really smart, and that's one of my favorite things about them.
Yeah. Do they kind of give you, like with monitors, there's a lot of like response, like you can actually see them thinking. And I think a lot of people don't get that from snakes, and it's why people, move to lizards and stuff. But like, is there like an actual like behavioral response that you get from them that you can see where they're thinking and figuring things out?
I would say so. It's a lot different though than with the monitors, because what a lot of people visualize when they see that is also a defense response with the monitors, right? You see them thinking, processing their next move, whether, they're going to dip off the other way or they're going to bite you, right? Yeah. With Abronia, they do some of that as well. But with them, they're very careful about every little movement they make. And like, similar to other reptiles, they'll sway like chameleons, you know what I mean? To kind of emulate a branch kind of moving in the wind, things like that. And another thing is like when you're feeding them, they pay attention to what you're feeding them. So like, for example, mine, and like the ones behind me, these are the ones from my collab with Wholesome Herps, Ollie. Those guys, all of them, man, the second you pull out a grasshopper, they know exactly what a grasshopper is, right?
Mhm.
But you try and trick them with a cricket, and they're like, not so fast, man. I know that that's not the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're definitely really smart. And, it's one of those things that as someone that works with leopard geckos primarily, they're not the smartest reptiles. They're one of those that they'll walk right off your hand. They'll,
Yeah.
fall off of a rock. They'll climb up too far in their enclosure and fall, things like that, right? They're just not very smart and aware of their surroundings. And with Abronia, it's much different. They're almost extra aware of what's going on. You know what I mean? Not only are they paying attention to what's going on in front of them, but also behind them. And what's cool is they have those prehensile tails. You know what I mean? And they kind of use those tails, I've noticed, as like a bit of a feeler, kind of in a way, not just to look for branches, but just to kind of see what else is going on around them too. You know what I mean? From that backside.
Oh, interesting.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it's kind of neat.
I didn't know.
I didn't even know they had a prehensile tail.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
They're like the little finger monkeys of the reptile world.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's so cool, man. And they come in so many different insane colors too. Like that one you posted with I guess it was a grasshopper in his mouth. Like the reds and the grays and stuff. I think it was insane, dude.
That one's probably one of my favorite animals. And, a big part of that is because, like I was telling you, that intellectual capability, that dude, for some reason, he seems very wise to me as like a lizard. You know what I mean? He's very cautious about everything that he does. And, when I'm like handling him or need to like take him out for weights, things like that, or even just to photograph him, he's very like calm and placid. And you can tell that he's kind of learned that I'm like the one that takes care of him, right? Because before, when I first got him, it definitely took some time to get these animals used to me. It wasn't like an overnight thing, you know what I mean? But yeah, that dude and his colors are absolutely insane.
What species, like what's your group look like now? Like what species are you keeping and how many do you have?
So I currently keep Abronia graminia black eye, and there's also a blue-eyed variation, and it's believed to be a separate subspecies, but there's not been enough documentation and research put out there formally yet. I keep Calico lythrachilla as well, and that's the one that like Brenden was talking about with the reds, the whites, the yellows, and the grays. And then I also have a pair of Calico lythrachilla as well behind me, from Ollie at Wholesome Herps, the one I'm doing my collab with. And then she also sent me 2 pairs of her Oaxaca. And those are the ones that I've posted that have like the black and silver look to them, or like even the copper tones.
Yeah.
And later this week, actually on Wednesday, I'm expecting my male Arita from Savannah at Perfect Hue LLC.
Nice.
Yeah,
or Perfect
man,
Hue
nice.
Herps, I think is her.
Yeah.
Yeah, Perfect Hue Herps.
We're definitely going to have her on at some point as well.
Yeah, man. Her and Ollie are very, very smart people. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times, obviously, I'm still new to this, so I'm always asking questions and, just trying to fill my brain with as much info that's out there as possible. But Ollie and Savannah and Bubba as well, they've been a really huge help to me as far as, answering questions and just kind of comparing things that we do as far as husbandry goes. You know what I mean? Someone will tell me something and it gives me an idea, and immediately I want to change what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always nice to have that like tight-knit group of people too that keep the same thing and you can kind of bounce ideas and stuff off of. It definitely helps a ton.
We were just saying the 1 second, this picture of the one with the grasshopper, this is the Calico lythrachilla, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
cool, man. They
And
look
then-
like a little dragon. Like
These are the
I just can't
black-eyed
get over.
graminia?
Correct.
Okay. And then what was the other one you said you were keeping?
The Oaxaca are going to be, scroll down, it's going to be that one right there.
Wow.
Oh, those
And
are rad.
Those are the ones that, like I said, are part of the partnership between me and Wholesome Herps. So she paired those guys up together at her house and Colorado earlier, in the year, and then sent them to me to raise the babies, and we're gonna kind of work together on that, which will be really cool because not only do I get a shot at taking care of another species as well, but I get to help a friend out, so that's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I definitely want to talk about how that like partnership started, but with these guys being such a cold temp species, how do you ship them? Like, is it just cold packs and just hope for the best, or with you being in
So
Arizona, I mean, it's got to be.
I personally have never shipped Abronia before, but I've obviously received them.
Yeah.
And I've received in the summertime as well. Obviously not in like 120-degree weather, but in the 90s, temps like that. And how they were sent to me was with a cryo pack and then ice
Okay.
packs as well
Gotcha.
to kind of keep them cold. During this time of year, I would probably feel comfortable sending them with a cryo pack that had been stuck in the fridge, for a day or so, and that would be sufficient. But as far as like shipping goes, if I get to the point where I'm producing and sending out to other people, it'll definitely be happening in the winter months. So that way I'm not
Yeah, that
risking
makes sense.
anything temperature wise. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
you mentioning that, so is your plan to, and this is, I guess, part of your partnership, but like, is your plan to keep all the babies back for now?
So how our partnership works is we're splitting everything 50-50 this first year, and then second year it'll be 75-25. With the animals that we are producing this year, the only ones that I foresee me and my partner letting go of are probably going to be the Calico Lythrachilla. But even then, I know they want to keep a pretty substantial amount for themselves, and also to do some trading with other breeders so we can kind of mix bloodlines in, things like that. As far as the Oaxaca go, I know we aren't going to be getting rid of any of those. Those are going to be staying strictly between me and them, just so that way we can kind of keep, I guess, control on them. And we're going to send them to close friends that also have animals of that species potentially. So that way we can kind of, like I said, do other collabs, things like that, and work towards the future with those guys. But I do plan to have my black-eyed graminia available for some people in the future if anyone, is looking to get some. It's obviously, I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but, I do foresee myself letting go of at least 4 of them.
Okay. Are they...
Do I build an Abronia room or what? Do I do this?
I mean, honestly, bro, I've got a whole room dedicated to it, and I'm loving it. The only part I don't like about it is it gets pretty cold in here, but I mean, other than that, it's pretty dang cool. I love walking in here, and it's way different than my leopard gecko room, right? Because my leopard gecko room is pretty warm at all times. You can go in there, and if you're a little bit chilly in the house, just go hang out in the leopard gecko room. You'll warm up right away. You know what I mean?
Yep, I do the same thing, man.
But yeah, no, I would say it's worth it, man. They're a lot of fun to keep, and personally, I really like designing the enclosures. I haven't quite gotten to the level of Savannah at Wholesome Herps, or not Wholesome Herps, sorry, that's Ollie. Savannah at Perfect Hue Herps. But, that's definitely something that I'm working towards. Eventually, I'd like to replace all my screen enclosures with, the Dubia ones, or even Tamura designs if I could afford them.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are sweet enclosures.
So before we talk about the enclosures and stuff, how did your guys' partnership like come to be?
So I actually bought my female black-eyed graminia from Ollie last year in the summertime, and we just kind of stayed in touch and developed a friendship because they were one of the people that was very accepting to me, kind of like how you mentioned, with you and I, in the Abronia hobby. Something that you'll find, unfortunately, is a lot of people like to keep their tips and tricks a secret. And there's a lot of rude people out there that just straight up don't want to talk to you about the animals, period. You know what I mean? And Ollie wasn't one of those people. Ollie had always been super cool with me from day one and just really nice. And it was a really positive, happy experience. And that friendship just kind of built into other things because we both had very common goals in mind. And I think a huge part of it as well too is Ollie knows that, you know, with these animals, I'm not scared to take them to the vet, right? If something happens, you know, they know that they can count on me to make sure that that animal is seeing Dr. Merker right then and there, and you know, it's going to be taken care of no matter what. So, you know, that's pretty much just how it started. It was kind of, my friend just one day reached out and was like, hey, you want to work on this together? And I was like, sure. And she created a DocuSign, and it just kind of went from there.
Oh yeah, awesome, man.
I love the professionalism there with the DocuSign and everything too. I feel like,
I feel like nowadays there's got to be, unfortunately, just because with the way that things can happen, you know, you can't always trust someone's word. But I'm glad that, you know, the DocuSign is a feature that we can obviously use, because not only does it protect us, but it protects the other person as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Stuff like that's just like, I feel like how you level up, you know, your game and stuff like that is like I don't know. We've talked about this before, like in our group and stuff, is just like professionalism and having standards and stuff like that. And I think DocuSign like that is a huge, like, just makes everything more professional. So
see, and that's one thing that I've really kind of looked up to those people in the Abronia hobby with when it comes to that. Like Ollie, like I said, Savannah and Bubba, you know, those guys, they're very professional with it, and they want to deliver what they're doing in the best message possible. You know what I mean? And I think when you're working with a species like this that's so gray area and so misunderstood, it's really important to be that way, right? Because not only does it add to your credibility, but it's just better for the animal, the species, the genus, everything all together in the long run. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When there's people out there smuggling, doing shady shit, things like that, it does nothing but make it harder for the people like us that are trying to do things the right way.
Absolutely. And that is something that, like, from a bird's eye view in the Abronia hobby, it's like everyone in there is very professional and everything's done in like almost like a zoo level. And I guess the animals almost require it because they're conditions, but like everything's almost done in a zoo. Like when you see somebody's Abronia facility, it looks like the back room of a zoo, you know, which I always appreciated about the Abronia hobby. It's interesting though that you said earlier, like, you know, people are rude and stuff. In kind of the gatekeeping sense there, that's a wild thing to hear. And, you know, I know it goes on in the reptile hobby, but just personally, like, it's like, how could you not love talking about something that you love you know? I don't get it.
You know, it's definitely one of those things where you could look at it that way for sure, but I think a huge part of it is it's hogging the success, right? Because you got to think, if you share the code on how you reproduce these animals, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now everyone can do it, and you know, for the people that are looking at it at a monetary value, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Only for the money aspect of it, that's what they're focused on, is the competition, not sharing the knowledge to better, you know, the species and the survival rate, things like that, right?
Yeah. It's the problem, the age-old problem in the reptile community, for sure.
Yep.
Definitely.
And then at the same time, they say they love the species they're working with. That's what gets me. It's like, you don't love it if you're gatekeeping information on it. Like, in my opinion, that's love for the money you're getting, not the love of the animal.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But I can go on a tangent on that one. So.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, it's like the same thing with the cat geckos, man. They're just like, I mean, you know, you're looking into them and stuff. I'm sure you see it, but like, you ask people for information and they just give you the cookie cutter, you know, breed it like a leopard gecko or like a crested gecko. I get it all the time. They breed just like a crested gecko. Bullshit. There's no way. But it is what it is, man.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're talking partnerships. So you got how many lizards from Ollie?
So I currently have 3 pairs from Ollie. I have 2 pairs of the Oaxaca, and then I also have the albino, or not the albino, I don't know why the hell I was about to say that, the calico Lythergilla.
Okay.
I was about to say albino Lytherchilla. Like, man, that'd be crazy.
Yeah. It's got to be you gatekeeping some information over there.
Right?
No shit.
World's
awesome.
first.
Okay. And then you have some other ones from other people as well?
No, so the animals that I have besides that are all going to be mine. So the other pair of Calico Lytherchilla are mine. The black-eyed Graminia are mine. And then what I had mentioned was I have a Arita coming from Savannah at Perfect Hue Herps this week. And that one was one that I had bought from her last week.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I'm excited.
So where did the other ones that you purchased, like Brenden and I, for context, did a quick morph market search of some of these Abronia last week, and we are just trying to, see how much they cost and things like that. But were these like on morph market available, or did you know somebody, or how'd you?
So my first one was actually acquired through someone here in Tucson that is kind of known in the community, and the dude just reached out to me one day, kind of hard on cash, and he was like, "Hey man, do you want to buy my black-eyed Graminia for $375?" And I was like, "Bro, there's no way I'm saying no. Like, I don't care if I'm eating ramen for the next week. Like, I'm buying
send
lizard,
me the PayPal,
you know what I mean?
man."
Yeah.
So I bought him, and it pretty much just started from there, right? After that, I was on a mission to get myself a female. And that was obviously how I met Ollie, you know what I mean, through acquiring her. And then another person in the community, Donia Zabronias, he was a person that, had been really cool to me as well, kind of as far as like answering questions go and things like that. And that was who I had gotten my Calico Lytherchilla pair from. And, those guys, they've been awesome ever since. I mean, with Ghost, when he had sent her to me, he told me, she paired earlier in the year, so there is possibility that she's gravid. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I don't know if you guys have kind of paid attention on the post that I made, but she did have some complications with that pregnancy, so she had to go through a surgery. But other than that, I mean, I couldn't be happier with the animals that I have. And then as far as like the one that I just bought, that one was on Morph Market from Savannah, but I mean, it's one of those things that I could have just hit her up on Instagram as well and been like, "Hey, Sav, blah, blah, blah," right? But when it comes to buying Abronia, I will say it's something you need to be very, very, very careful about. Origin is everything, right? And you don't want to get it from people that are secondhand buying them from the people smuggling them into the country, right? Because, not only does it potentially cause issues for you legally, but the health of the animal as well. When that stuff comes in smuggled straight out of the wild, you got to worry about parasite load, things like that. And a lot of these people, they don't set them up properly right away. I mean, I know about 7 months ago, I had seen someone that was keeping theirs with like felt plants and grapevine, you know what I mean? And stuff like that, right? So, it's just really important where you get them from, honestly. Yeah. And even like the ones that you see on Morph Market right now, they say that there's legal paperwork on them and everything like that, right? But we don't know if that's actually legit until CITES updates their database later on this year, and we can go back and check and cross-reference that, right? So, like I said, it's just really important to be careful and to know who you're dealing with. And like I said, a couple of the names that I've listed, Bubba, Sav at Perfect Hue, and Ollie, Wholesome Herps, those are people that I would personally recommend and say that are safe to deal with, right? And that's just because not only have I gotten to know them over time, but I've also personally dealt with them myself.
Yeah, that's huge too. Just also because you don't want to be supporting the smuggling side too, these animals, and I'm sure we can.
Well, definitely. And like I had said, when we're supporting that, realistically, we're just taking steps back. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And obviously, fresh bloodlines, things like that are important, but it needs to be done the right way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And people like Savannah, obviously, you know, Savannah was one of the first people to ever, not one of, I think she is the first person ever to import Abronia legally from Canada into the United States. You know what I mean? You know, that took a lot of work and a lot of, you know, research, paperwork, things like that, documentation and all that. And I feel like if you're willing to put that in, you deserve those animals, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, for sure.
you know, getting them from a smuggler or secondhand from someone that has, that's kind of shortcutting. It's going the cheap route, right? So, you know, definitely don't cheat yourself out, and, you know, try and do things the right way, because it'll not only be beneficial for the animals in the long run, but for you as a keeper.
Didn't this makes me think, didn't Forrest Fanning used to, like, he had a huge Abronia group at one time, didn't he? Do you know where those went? Do they still have those?
So Forrest, unfortunately, when he passed away, you know, it left a lot of responsibility onto Dez and the people that were working with him, right? And I know a lot of them died off, unfortunately. Some were definitely sold, you know what I mean? But I know a lot of those animals unfortunately did pass away, and it really sucked, because Forrest was really the only person that was like, you know,
yeah, man, he was like the guy. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, he was like the only person really going kind of headstrong with them. And, you know, I will say I'm very sad that I got into Abronia at a later time on this type of serious level, and not when Forrest was still alive, so that I could have picked his brain a little bit and asked him questions, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, excuse me, but thankfully, Des is still alive, right? And I'm sure she's learned a lot from Forrest as well. I haven't ever reached out to her, but I'm sure, you know, if I were to send her a message and be like, hey, would you mind, you know, sending or hopping on the phone for a little bit and just talking to Bronia? I'm just kind of curious, you know, what you learned in your time working with them, things like that. She'd probably be happy to talk to me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Is the Abronia Alliance still a thing? Do you know?
Abronia Alliance is still a thing. I know they just recently sold off a lot of their animals on Morph Market, but I'm pretty sure they still have a decent, you know, group, and are still working towards breeding and their conservation efforts, things like that. The Discord that I'm a part of, that Savannah and Ollie created, we're also kind of trying to do the same thing, you know, in there, really just kind of spread information about all different topics on Abronia as a genus, and then the different subspecies and species as well, you know what I mean? And we've also talked about in there kind of pulling together cash and potentially doing things towards conservation as well. We're just, you know, still working it out, figuring out all the details, and ultimately it's up to Savannah and Ollie, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you know how many species are actually like legally available in the US currently?
Well,
or being worked with?
Technically, I mean, none are legally available, I guess you would say. They are legally, but like I said, it's that gray area, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, the only ones that I would say you're going to find that you can definitely bank on being captive bred are going to be like your Lithochilla and like your Graminia, whether it be black eye or blue eye. And the reason I say that is because Brian Susan at Sundown Reptiles, you know, he's already been reproducing them here in the United States, captive bred, a couple times. And, you know, he's got his multi-generation line that he's working on with the Lithros. And then people like Maddie and Tyler over at Celestial Exotics, I know those guys have been working with, I believe, the Graminia and produce them as well. So, you know, there's definitely a few people out there that you could for sure get captive bred Abronia from.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember like back in the day watching all of Forrest stories, and they just had like 30 species. Maybe that's too many, but they just had crazy amounts of species in there. And I was like, I can't imagine. You go on Morph Market, and all you see is Lithochilla and Graminia. So I was just wondering. I was curious about that.
Definitely, you know, and one thing I will say, I don't necessarily want to point fingers, but obviously those animals had to come in some way, right?
Yeah.
And, if you're paying the right amount of money, you can get anything you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As crappy as it is. So, even though those were here and potentially available in the US at one time, part of me is kind of glad that they're maybe not at the same time anymore. You know what I mean? Just because I feel like we really need to work on doing that the right way to kind of set a good example for the Abronia community and also, the United States,
Yeah.
if you will, right?
Yeah. So what's going on with them in the wild? And then we can talk other things. This isn't one of the questions we had written down, but like, what do you know, like as far as conservation status and like some of the threats that they're facing in the wild?
So multiple different species are found in multiple different areas. You know what I mean? You can find them in Tamaulipas. You can find them in Oaxaca. You can find them in, all different kinds of places, right, in Mexico, specific to those different montane regions. But the biggest thing that they're facing right now, being that they're a montane species living in the oak and, the pine forests, is deforestation, right? Because that's going to be the number one wood that they're going to be using for logging, things like that, right? So that's a huge problem for a lot of the species. And another one is the locals out there think that they're venomous or poisonous because they're so brightly colored, right? So there's actually people that go down there and, kind of vouch to those people and teach them like, hey, these are not bad. They're not going to bite you and kill you. They're not venomous, things like that, right? So, those are the real problems that they're facing. And then obviously, the pet trade, that's another problem that they're facing is the smuggling to get into the pet trade. And that's why, the stuff that me, Ollie, Savannah, Bubba, and all the other people that truly are working towards captive breeding these species and having them readily available for other keepers so we can, swap bloodlines, things like that, so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Captive breeding is always key for that.
Well, and, one thing I want to add to that, too, is I don't know of any zoos or any AZA accredited facilities that are working towards it specifically like we are. You know what I mean? Like, for example, like how I mentioned, I have a whole room dedicated to these animals and I don't plan at stopping here, right? I'm going to continue to further my work with them and continue to grow with them. And like I said, I don't really see anyone else doing that aside from the private keepers.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's something too we talked about 2 episodes ago with Roy from Wellspring Herp, but with the Polychrus is it's just, and I think he knew of one zoo that was working with them, but it's just not a species that you would generally see in a zoo or something. I feel like a lot of these small species like AZAs just don't want to spend their time working on because it's not, a tiger and people aren't necessarily drawn to donate money to help their cause.
Right.
It's a huge area that the private sector can be helpful,
Definitely.
So things like that and the Brony Alliance and, I'm into turtles. So on the turtle side, we've got the Connexus Cooperative and things like that are how we in the hobby can kind of, work towards that goal, produce them captively, have that kind of bank, even if the zoos aren't ever going to use it for reintroduction. Who knows what'll happen, 100 years from now when we've got crazy lines that you, Thomas, yourself have bred for generations.
Yeah, no shit.
Right?
Who knows? So it's always good.
No, definitely. And, I know San Diego Zoo definitely does have some Abronia, and they're animals that they've gotten, obviously, in seizures over the border right there in San Diego, things like that. But like I said, you don't really hear anything about them working towards those conservation efforts. So it's something that I think I find pretty special in what I do, right?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Some personal value and meaning, which is
definitely
huge.
And by no means can I take credit obviously for like the Oaxaca or the Lytherchilla that Ollie paired together, but like my Graminia, for example, right, those ones, were a species that I paired together myself, and worked towards. And
Yep.
it's a step in the future, right? Because those guys are critically endangered. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But at the same time, though, you do have to take some credit because, I mean, these guys obviously entrust you enough to send you some very rare, expensive lizards because they trust you and what you can do with them, So you can take some credit for sure.
Definitely. But at the same time, I do want to make sure, that Ollie's
Yeah,
getting
absolutely.
their credit as well, just because,
Yeah.
for example, with the Oaxaca, we're almost 99% sure these are going to be the first United States captive bred babies ever.
Wow.
So cool, man.
It'll be awesome.
What
That's
an
amazing.
accomplishment when that happens.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really honestly blessed to be able to have a part in raising them and taking care of them. So it'll be cool.
Yeah, man. No one gets to do that. You're one of very, very few, or the first at this point, really. It's gonna be crazy, man.
Yeah,
definitely.
Those are the coolest ones too. Just from looking at your page,
Yeah.
The black and white speckling and stuff that they have, it's just amazing.
They're neat, and I really like the head shape of them too. They kind of have like that, real dragon-esque like boldness to it, I guess you would say, with those big scales.
Yeah,
insane.
I'm gonna, just because the picture on it doesn't show the head, I'm gonna Google this really quick, so we can kind of see what the head looks like. I love the dragon kind of look to them though. Like that is the draw to Abronia. It's just how much they look like dragons.
Yeah, they really do.
Awesome.
Yeah, here we go. Share my screen. Apologies for anyone listening, but YouTube's always the best for this show.
They know the vibe by now. They have
to. Yeah. I love that coloring.
Yeah, man.
That's another one right here in the middle. Is that an Oaxaca or is that... Did we lose Thomas? Are you there?
I can't tell if that one's Oaxaca or Teniata.
Okay.
It kind of looks like Oaxaca. So that's another thing. Here in captivity, their captive colors tend to look a lot different than they do in the wild. In the wild, you tend to see a lot of bright greens, a lot of yellows, reds, things like that, right? So it's really hard to say, but, it definitely could be for sure. I would say the one, scroll back up, like right there. That, and then the one that's middle line, right, nope, down, and to the left. That one. I would say those two, as far as color go, look is similar to what we have in captivity, but.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, they're just really cool, man. The dragon is amazing.
Actually, the female, it's not,
They're
you guys
insane.
aren't going to be able to see, obviously, because of the glare, but the pregnant female, she's sitting under her basking spot right now, cooking those babies up.
That's awesome.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Speaking of basking spots, I don't know if you're ready for this, Brenden, but do you want to jump into enclosures?
Before we do that,
okay.
just because I think it's a cool story, the story about Ghost and the whole vet and the, that whole process. Can you just talk about that real quick? Because I think it'd be cool for people to hear.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. So, like I was saying, Ghost had to get a surgery earlier this year. And what had happened was, I'd had her for about 3 or 4 months and she was doing great. She looked amazing. She was eating, and doing just fine, right? And in about a 48-hour period, I noticed like an extreme decline in her where she lost like a ton of weight. She was very lethargic, very like dehydrated looking, and just didn't look good, right? Obviously, like the picture you saw on my Instagram, you could tell she was really just not doing well. And so I called Dr. Merker, my vet, and I told him, I was like, hey man, my female Abronia there's definitely something wrong with her, you know what I mean? And he was like, bring her in, bro, we'll take care of her, we'll look at her, blah, 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 right? So I get her there, and he runs like, I don't know if it was like an MRI or like a CT scan, but he does like a scan of her, right? And he sees this big mass inside of her stomach and she's an older animal. Ghost is 8 years old. So for a lot of people that don't know, Abronia can live, into their 20s and 30s, and they breed. They don't reach sexual maturity until after about 5 years old, right?
Oh, wow.
So Ghost is right now kind of just in her prime. And, I brought her in, like I said, and he did the scan. And like I said, she's an older animal. So there was potential for like cancer or a tumor, things like that. And he saw this mass, and that's initially what he believed it to be. And he sent me a message on Facebook, and he was like, hey, man, I'm really sorry, but we might have to euthanize her, blah, blah, blah. And, we were talking about it a little bit more. But Dr. Merker is a herp specialized vet, right? He's authored a lot of books on herpetology, and, he's someone that's actually pretty well known in our hobby, right? And he told me, he was like, I'm going to talk to a couple other friends and I'm going to sleep on it. He did that. He slept on it. And the next day he ran some more tests, and high levels of bacteria came back in her bloodstream, which led him to think, okay, so it's not cancer, it's infection of some sort, right? So immediately he decided to operate. And he told me the moment that he made his incision, he didn't even have to do any type of digging around or anything, that the mass just busted right out of the little hole. And he said it was like a mummified follicle. And I posted a picture of it on my Instagram for people to see. But, he had told me that they tried to dissect it and stuff, and it was really hard and really like layered, you know what I mean? Like he'd been in there for a long time. And so once he got that out, he threw some stitches in there, got her all, tied up. And he sent me home with some carnivore care, and was telling me to just kind of syringe feed her and really monitor things like that. So I was doing just that. I was giving her the carnivore care, and then I like to give all of my Abronia a little water cup in their enclosures, and I would take one of my little disposable water cups, and I'd fill it with water, and I'd like give her water, with my hands and things like that. And after about 2 weeks, she went from being like a really frail, sick lizard that I wasn't sure was going to make it over the next 48 hours to like completely back to her normal self. She was back to being angry and biting me and being crazy, you know what I mean? And now, if you were to look at Ghost, man, you wouldn't even think that lizard had a surgery. And, if anything, she went from those pictures you see of her being all skinny, she's a little on the thicker side now, and that was because I've been spoiling her, just trying to get her weight back up, you know what I mean? So she's been eating nothing but grasshoppers and red runners and dubia roaches. But like I said, she's perfectly happy and healthy now. And, my vet said that she is safe to try breeding again in the future. Nice. It's something that, I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest with you, just because there's now scar tissue down there and things like that. But all of her reproductive organs are still intact, and they weren't harmed in that process. You know what I mean? So, I'm going to wait a year from when she had her surgery, and then I'm going to talk to my vet about it again. And some friends in the hobby, Savannah, Ollie, Bubba, and kind of get everyone's opinion on it and really see, right, like what they think I should do as far as, breeding goes. Because, at the end of the day, I don't want to kill my lizard or harm her in any way by breeding her. But, this is for conservation efforts, right, at the same time. So I do want to make sure I'm doing the most with what I can do. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to put her in harm's way or risk her life for, a couple babies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
And good on the vet too for not just assuming it's cancer and putting her down and sleeping on it and then coming back and being like, yo, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and then now you have a perfectly healthy alive lizard instead of, a baggie in your freezer.
Yeah.
Definitely, man. And it was awesome too. I really can't give Dr. Merker enough of a shout out when it comes to like all of my specialty animals, you know what I mean? But like that dude, I mean, he's gone into work for me on his days off to treat lizards that had just come in from import, you know what I mean? He's, taking care of my dogs. He takes care of all my exotics, things like that. So I really give that man a lot of credit, and you can definitely believe he'll be getting some Abronia babies from me when they're born. I've already promised him 2 Graminia, so
Oh yeah,
yeah.
love that.
That's awesome having a vet that keeps reptiles, man. That's
Oh,
amazing.
dude, he's really, really cool, and he's actually authored a couple books as well, like any of the ones about like the Alterna, the gray banded king snakes. He has like that. It's like a white. I can go and grab it real quick. It's a white book that's basically like all about them. I'll go grab it.
All right.
Yeah, go grab it.
So
So
funny,
cool.
man. The local vet that I've gone to previously was like, I brought in like a 30-year-old corn snake that, you know, was very old and had a lot of issues. And they were like, do you have UVB on it? And I was like, at the time, I didn't have UVB on my snake. So I was like, no. And they were like, okay, like they're definitely going to recommend that. I was like, that is not the problem. I was like, I can promise you that is not the problem.
So this is the book.
Oh, okay. I've seen that book. Yeah.
And his name is Walter Merker, and then his dad's name is Gerald Merker, and then his parents, also Brenden, this is one for you. His parents authored this book as well. Wow. So he's definitely a really well-known vet and a very smart guy. So I trust him with all of my reptiles for sure.
Yeah.
Dude, how lucky to have a vet like that locally, man.
Yeah.
Oh, what I would give.
I can't even tell you. It's awesome.
Yeah.
My local vet she'll see reptiles, but she's not like, that's not her forte. She'll just give me her opinion on things, but having someone like that is like worth its weight in gold, man.
Yeah.
Definitely. And, you know, like I was saying, the cool thing about Merker is him and I, we've become friends now at this point, right? So it's one of those things I can give him a call or send him a text and be like, hey, Merker, you know, can you look at these guys for me? And he's quick to put me on or make room for me no matter what. So it's awesome.
That's cool, man. Love that.
Yeah. That's a resource that I feel like a lot of people would appreciate, is having somebody that nearby. It's just not common, and I understand why it's not common. I mean, I'm sure he sees people from all over who probably come to see him because there's just not a huge market for it in every place. But that's awesome.
Definitely.
All right, we want to do enclosures.
Yeah, man. Let's talk some cages. That's what we're here for.
So if you want to give us like a rundown of all your kind of setups and how you have them right now, what the plans are, and everything.
So basically I keep all lone adults in the medium Zoom Ed Reptibreeze enclosures. So I believe those are 36 by 18 by 18 or something like that. And I do lots of like cork tubes, cork flats, cork branches, like the ones that have the wood inside of them. And then I try and stack them so that there's lots of different levels to light exposure, right? And I think that's a huge key with me keeping them here in Arizona, is making sure that they have a hot spot, but that it's not heating up the entire enclosure, right? That it's focused. And I've been able to do that with cork flats and tubes, like I was saying. So, you know, I build it up in a way that hot spot is localized on, you know, a 4-inch area that's, you know, 6 to 8 inches away from the bulb itself, right? Live plants, you know, you definitely can use fake plants, but I think live plants are a huge key, and I think the animals really appreciate it as well. Obviously, I don't have mine fully bioactive like Savannah because I keep sphagnum moss in the bottom and I don't have a cleanup crew. But, you know, I always make sure I have 2 potted plants in there, whether it's like some sort of palm or ficus or a money tree or pothos or things like that. As far as my breeding pairs go, I keep them in the large Reptibreeze enclosures or in like the Zoom Ed double doors with the acrylic. So like my breeding pair of Lytherchilla, when they were together, I had them in that big double door acrylic front opening enclosure. And with that one, same thing, you know, just lots of stacking of the wood things like that. A really important thing with the Abronia is making sure, and this was something that Savannah Perfect Hue Herps pointed out to me is, with these guys, they're great climbers, but they definitely need a little bit of bark to kind of grab onto and help them with getting around, because, if you give them like Manzanita, for example, which has a little bit more of a smooth surface to it, if it's not sandblasted, they tend to slip and not really hang on to it as well. So I think that's a big key. But yeah, man, really it's just providing them good UVB, a basking spot. I don't care what anyone says. I live here in Arizona and I give all of mine a basking spot. So it's definitely essential. And, fresh water, I never really see them drinking from the water cups by themselves. But I always have one in there. And, if I see the animal out and about being bold and wanting to socialize, I'll pick up the cup and, put it to them and offer them a drink of water, right? But, yeah.
What's like the equipment you're using? Like as far as like the heat bulbs and the UVB and everything like that, like specifically?
So as far as like the UVB and everything goes, that really just depends on the enclosure, right? So I use all Arcadia products, but on some of my enclosures have a 14% bulb because, the amount of exposure that they get, and some of them have the shade dweller. So I can't remember if it's like 8 or 7%, something like that.
Yeah.
But some of them have the shade dweller, right? And that's just kind of depending on the animal and their needs as far as the way that their enclosure is set up. And then also the species itself, right? Like, for example, the Oaxaca, they prefer a little bit more of a drier climate from what I've noticed. And they also prefer a bit more of the UVB. Those ones I've personally seen, going up to the branches that are localized and up higher towards that UVB and just sitting under there and getting that rather than, being under the basking spot and trying to simultaneously get it, right?
Okay.
As far as basking goes, I'm using the Zoomed Nanos, and depending on the size enclosure, so all the larges get the 40-watt bulb, and like the double door gets the 40-watt bulb, but all of my medium enclosures are using the 35-watt halogens.
Okay. And what's like the temperatures you're going for in your basking spots?
So in my basking spots, I usually see anywhere from like 80 all the way up to like I've seen 100 degrees in some areas, right? It really just depends on how close it is to the light. And the biggest thing when it comes to that is, like I was saying, is just making sure that it's localized so that it's not in an area that it's going to continue to widespread it throughout the enclosure, right? Because if I were to have that, I would have a really hard time keeping it at a pretty optimal 70 degrees ambient with lower 60s down into the bottom and then the 90s to 100 up in the top, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Is that basking spot something they use often, or is it just like maybe once or twice a day, or?
It's really hard to say because different species have different behavior patterns. So like the Graminia tend to be a little bit more reclusive, as well as the Oaxaca. Those guys, I see them maybe 2 to 3 times a day, and then the rest of the day they're hidden, whereas the Lythros are always out sunning themselves, kind of out in the open being bold. And then at nighttime they all kind of go and find their little like nestling, like hiding spots to go and sleep in, right?
Gotcha. Okay. Are you using any kind of like foggers or misting systems or anything like that?
In the one enclosure with the acrylic double doors, I have a fogger running on that one from time to time, but it's more so just because I have a lot of air plants in there and living Spanish moss, things like that. And, with me working at the pet store and being so busy with that all the time, I don't have the time to obviously, spray it as much as I'd like. And that's something else that I'm going to get into, Everything that I have here is hand misted, so I'm not using a Mist King, anything like that. And it's definitely something that I want to switch to using to make it a little bit easier on me. And also, to allow sprinkles during the nighttime as well for those humidity spikes.
Gotcha.
Mist King's a game changer, dude.
Yeah, you
It's
just
a game changer. I love it so much. I've had it going for 2 days and I'm in love with it.
Yeah. Just from a consistency perspective, it's like you could be the most consistent human in the world and you still won't be as consistent as a Mist King. So
Definitely.
Yeah, you can't beat it.
Do you have like a humidity goal you're trying to get to, or does it matter? Or?
I don't necessarily have a humidity goal, but like right now, for example, looking on my Govee thermostat or thermometers, my room, the general humidity in the room itself is about 42%. And then in the bottom of the enclosures, it's reading at 93%. And then it varies throughout, areas in the enclosure, right? Obviously, the sphagnum moss is going to be the wettest, most damp part of it, so it'll be the highest. But, the humidity definitely does carry in. And I think the live plants do a lot with that as well, right? With helping with the humidity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But as far as the humidity goal, I would say I don't necessarily have like a goal, but I've noticed my animals seem to thrive at what their conditions currently are, which, like I said, the higher humidity in the bottom of the enclosure where they can go and, for shedding, things like that, right? And, up at the top, it's a little bit drier where they kind of get to pick and choose.
Gotcha. Okay. And I know you were saying earlier that you wanted to switch to potentially like Tamura Designs or something like that, or Dubia or something. Why would you want to switch? And like, what about the Reptibreeze? And
the reason for that is honestly just going to be durability and, durability and being able to set it up in a bioactive way, right? With isopods, springtails, the drainage layer, a bunch of live plants. There's really nobody out there setting up Abronia enclosures better than Savannah at Perfect Hue. You know what I mean? And I think that's a goal for myself that I've kind of set. That's a standard I want to meet, right? I want to have my stuff looking, just like hers. And it's not that mine looks bad by any means, or that my animals aren't thriving in it or anything like that. But hers are not only visually just gorgeous to look at, but you can tell the animals really appreciate it, because if you were to go and look at Mexico and take a snapshot of their natural environment out there, her enclosure basically emulates that to a T, right? It's exactly spot on. So, that's really just the goal for me. And the reason for wanting to do it is just to better myself as a keeper and, to make the animals more comfortable in their environment than they already are. And also just to have better enclosures that are going to last longer. Because, like, for example, these Reptibreezes, I've already punched holes in a couple of them. And, you can tell that they do the job, but you really only get about a good year and a half out of them before you need to replace them.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense.
And I've already replaced 3 of them since.
Oh, wow.
Abronia. Yeah.
That's insane.
Do they have like claws, or are they like what does their foot structure look like? I've never looked at them.
So yeah, they do have claws. Imagine Gastrophilus prasina, right? The green keelbelly lizards. They're basically just like that, but with more of a keeled scale pattern to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting.
That's pretty cool.
Do they, and this might be a weird question, but what's their poop look like? Like, I know with like geckos and stuff, they're pooping all over the glass and stuff like that. Like, what is it like?
Honestly, bro, it really just depends. I mean, to me, it just looks like a leopard gecko turd on a leaf. What I mean? It doesn't really look like anything too spectacular or too crazy. Yeah. And I think, that's also partially just because I have very healthy animals. I know that, if stuff has parasite load or things like that, right, you're going to have some runny stool or it's going to look a bit off. But, Yeah, no, I mean, as far as from what I've gathered, it really just looks like a normal lizard turd. It's got a white urate. Sometimes it'll have like a weird slimy coating around it, but
Okay.
it's not like slimy in a sense that it's to worry about. It's more so you could tell that dude probably just took a big shit. You know what I mean?
I got you. I feel like poop can be like an important topic to discuss because you get something, especially like an Abronia, where you're really concerned about the health conditions of the animals a lot of time, especially if we're going about the nefarious route of getting them, like you're talking about. And I think it's important for people to know like what a healthy poop, a healthy turd looks like. So I feel like that's
Yeah,
something.
I mean, I would say a healthy turd is solid, moist, and has a white urate, right? If the urates are looking any color other than that bright white that we're used to seeing, that's definitely cause for concern. But yeah, no, I mean, it just looks like a normal turd. And if it doesn't look like a normal turd, I'd worry.
Gotcha. Okay.
There you go, Jack.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. I really need to get that one out there. I need to start asking more people about poop, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, it's something no one ever talks about, just like sleep. No one talks about sleep with reptiles either.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, speaking of that, we talked about with Roy, like the polychris, they'll find their certain spots and they know that's where they're going to go sleep. Like, do the Abronia have like a certain spot where they sleep, or kind of what's their nighttime routine?
So I've kind of learned with these guys, obviously all of them as individuals kind of pick that spot where they want to go. But like, for example, Kratos, the one that Brenden was mentioning, the Lithochilla that has like all the crazy colors, that dude sleeps in the same spot every single time. And when I wake up in the morning and I go and turn on lights, I open his enclosure and I can look and find him in that spot, curled up in his little ball every single time. You know what I mean?
Amazing. Yeah,
it's so cool, man.
They're cool.
I feel like it's a behavior that isn't appreciated by keepers a lot of the time. Just thinking about like, especially on the snake side, because it's like you just give them a hide and a water bowl. No, I mean that normally that's like the standard approach for ball pythons or like whatever. And no one ever thinks about sleeping because they just have their hide and that's probably where they're asleep. But like, for things like lizards, where the way an enclosure is set up, a lot of time it's probably not a comfortable spot like throughout the enclosure. I think it's important to think about like providing spots for the animal to curl up and take a snooze.
Well, and I think like you said, sleep is really a big thing because obviously I keep the leopard geckos, right, but I keep other species of reptiles as well among the Abronia. And like, for example, my Acanthosaura, the horn dragons, those guys, I've come to learn that I would assume in the wild where they sleep is at the bases of trees, right? Because mine, the way that I have them set up is I have a huge cork tube and I have lots of plants surrounding it. And what I've noticed is they seem to seek comfort at the bottom base of that cork tube, kind of hidden under all of those plants. You know what I mean? Whereas like the Abronia, they like to be high up, kind of hidden in the Spanish moss and between the cork tubes, things like that, really nestled into their own little area. And then like my chameleon, for example, that dude, he just always sleeps on this one leaf and kind of blends into the leaf. He doesn't really do anything else.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so different for each species. It's really wild and again something that's just not talked about. So I love it.
Definitely.
Awesome.
So on the behavioral aspect, what's your favorite behavior that you've noticed from these guys? They do anything cool? Quirky?
Other than the way that they kind of like mimic chameleons and the way that they'll sway on like the trees when they walk, you know what I mean? Other than that, I haven't really noticed any kind of quirkiness about them. Like I said, they can be very sensitive at times. So you can be going in with your tongs to give them a grasshopper and you might do something that they just don't like and they're going to run away from you. You know what I mean? And you can kiss that grasshopper goodbye because you're not feeding it to that lizard no matter what you do that day. Right. But, other than that, they don't really seem to have any kind of quirks to them. They're smart, you know.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Before you got into them, and we talked about how you got into them and stuff, but like, what kind of research did you do on them ahead of time, and like, where did you do that? Like, I'm sure it wasn't just like a care sheet or whatever, but like, was there a specific source you went to, or like, how'd you research them?
Well, so like we had talked about, unfortunately in the Abronia hobby, there's a lot of gatekeeping that does go on. A lot of people that don't want to talk about things, share advice, different stuff like that.
Mhm.
And when I first started researching them, it was mainly just questions to friends that I knew that kept them, right? So like Bubba, Angelo, those guys, those were the only two people that I had known personally that were keeping them at the time. So I would just ask them questions. And it was always one of those things that, like, I remember telling myself, like, I can't wait to get a Bronia one day. Like, one day I'll trust myself enough to work with them, right? Like,
Mhm.
it was one of those things that I just didn't feel like I was ready for a long time. And then this dude, kind of Mickey, my Graminia, he popped up, like I said, $375. And it was one of those things where, like I told you, I couldn't say no to that. So it was kind of like, all right, now or never. And when I did that, obviously it opened up a whole new door for me, right? Because I had so many questions that, maybe couldn't be answered by my friends, right? And that's how I met Savannah from Perfect Hue, things like that. And, her and Ollie were super welcoming and had me join the Discord. And I can't even begin to tell you guys how amazing that Discord is when it comes to knowledge and information on Abronia. You know what I mean? You can go in there and they've got topics for feeder insects, diet, lighting, breeding, like all different little categories within the Discord where you can go and have different separate chats and ask questions. You know what I mean? And the nice thing about it is the information and the stuff that's talked about in there is there forever. So we can go back and we can look at, the scientific papers and things like that we see that we might not be able to find on the internet, but we can find it in that Discord in the form of screenshots, right? And that's a huge thing in researching them, is knowing how to research them properly, right? Because there's tons of information about them on the internet, but you have to know how to look it up to find that stuff. You know what I mean? It's not just going to pop up by you Googling Abronia care. You know what I mean? Those scientific research papers are, you really got to know what you're looking for. And I'm by no means an expert or, I would even say remotely good at doing research, because I have a very hard time finding stuff that I don't second guess with these guys. It's not credible, except for like when it comes from that Discord, right? Because that Discord, what's nice about it is there's open dialogue. So, if someone says something, but a couple people don't necessarily agree with it, or maybe have something to add to it, it happens right then and there, and those questions that you might have get answered for you. You know what I mean? So
that's super cool.
Like I was saying, anyone that is interested in Abronia, I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage reaching out to Savannah or Ollie and asking permission to be invited to the Discord, because it's a great resource to have and one that I use on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely have to put Ollie and Savannah's Instagram pages and stuff in the show notes. So if you're interested in hitting them up and learning more about Abronia,
definitely
there. That's awesome. And yeah, we did like a couple episodes ago about researching your reptile, and we talked a lot about the scientific papers and stuff like that. But one thing we didn't talk about, Brenden, was using your network and talking to people. And I think what Thomas was just explaining is like a perfect example of that, especially with a species like this, that like you're going to get a lot from scientific papers, but sometimes scientific papers don't translate well to how you're going to keep something captively, and you got to talk to people who have tried and you know, probably failed and also like had some success in order to really understand that. So I love
Well,
Yeah,
that.
you
and
can't.
it's great that you make that point too, because like you said, you know, there's definitely scientific research papers, but for some of these species specific,
Mhm.
there's not any information out there, you know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
only stuff that's known is from the people that have kept them in captivity,
Mhm.
that can tell you from firsthand experience. Like for example, you know, my Acanthosaura lepidogastr, right, the dwarf mountain horn dragons, those guys, I got them from my buddy Armin at Herp Time, and Armin was able to kind of give me, you know, how he kept them, things like that, and his recommendations as well. But, you know, other than that, I didn't really know anything else about them, you know what I mean? Other than these are awesome animals, and I totally want to breed them and work towards establishing them in captivity, right? And like you had said, you know, networking was the biggest part of learning for a lot of these guys for me, is just reaching out to different people on Instagram and asking them questions. And, you know, that's something that me and Savannah talked about the other day, that she told me, you know, she's not obviously the godfather of Abronia, but a lot of us turn to her with questions, right? And for advice, because Savannah is very into this on a scientific level, and she's able to kind of help break things down and even dumb it down for us in a way that we might be able to easier understand, you know. And I think, like, for example, you know, that information and things that I've learned from her, had I had not met her through Instagram, I would have probably been searching for that info for another 2-3 years, you know.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it's finding those people who are willing to share that knowledge with you, and that you can trust too. It's not like you're going to an importer and they're like, "Hey, this is, you know,
Yeah.
this is how I kind of set them up." And it's like a water
Right.
branches, you know.
Definitely.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have those kind of people in your corner, man. I wish we had more of that for the cat geckos in the hobby, but information
Me
for
too.
those is like
And
so
you know,
few and far between.
I think with the geckos, it's just kind of one of those things that it's grown to be so big, like the ball python community. You know what I mean? That
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely still those people out there that are doing like that type of research. You know what I mean? But it's become more of a money thing than about the animals. You know what I mean? There's, you know, it's, I don't want to like call people out, obviously, and I doubt there's anyone watching that I'm referring to, but I've noticed, you know, here in Arizona too, specifically, as oddly enough as it might sound, a lot of the people that were like breeding French bulldogs or selling drugs or doing stuff like that, they're trying to get into the reptile hobby and like wash that money or like do whatever they're doing, you know what I mean? And it's
That's
just,
wild.
it's really funny to me because you see them, and, you know, as someone that's grown up very street smart, I can pick it out of a crowd a mile away, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can immediately tell when they're in it for the hustle and the money,
Yeah.
not for the animals and the appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That's wild. I never thought about somebody washing money through reptiles.
Honestly, brother, I've seen a lot of it. I've seen
Really?
a lot of people that, I mean, even people that I personally know that have sold drugs, just knowing them from high school, they've hit me up and been like, "Hey, dude, I'll give you 10K. You breed these and give me this back." And I'm just like, "No, dude. Like,
That is
go
wild.
do it yourself." You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you imagine getting in with like a kingpin or something, and they're like, "You gotta breed these," and then the clutch goes bad or something, and you know?
Oh, dude, you're screwed.
Yeah. Oh God.
The Ozark of reptiles, man.
Yeah.
Right?
They know how hard the reptile hobby is, but
It's actually insane.
yeah, that's funny. Wild.
It's so wild.
Yeah. So what, you know, we've talked about a lot of things with Abronia, but like, if you were to point out like, you know, a couple of things that you think are the reason why they're not like well established in captivity, like what would it be?
The biggest one is going to be lack of understanding, right? so many people think that these animals are so fragile, and they definitely are. You know, I wouldn't say they're a beginner species by any means, but for the people out there that are scared to work with them and you know are terrified of failure, don't be. You know what I mean? The only way that you're going to learn and better yourself is through failures at some point. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
for example, like me with Ghost, right? I had to go through that learning experience of her having to go through that surgery, things like that, right? So, you know, the biggest thing is don't be scared about it, because obviously stuff's going to happen, but it happens in any aspect of animal keeping. Nothing's ever perfect. As far as other reasons why I think they're not, you know, established is, like I said, just that gray area. Them being a CITES 2 animal really makes it hard because, you know, 90, well, not 99, all of what we have here currently is illegal, you know, or not illegal, but stems from animals that were illegally smuggled, you know what I mean? So that being said, you know, that makes it hard as well. And, you know, another part of it is, I think, lack of dedication, right? There's only a few people out there that are willing to dedicate what's needed to the animal, you know what I mean, in order for them to thrive, right? Like me, for example, you know, I had to get a bigger house in order to pursue this further, and a huge part of why I moved was not only for my animals too, but for myself, you know what I mean? So that I could pursue my goals and continue to work farther in what I wanted to do. You know, another thing about it too, I think the reason why they're not as established is because the people that have them, they want to hoard them, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's very important to make sure that they do end up in proper hands and in the right care and with like-minded individuals that want to work towards the conservation efforts of breeding. But, you know, at the same time too, it's, you know, I understand it, right? Because these aren't animals that are at a level yet where it's acceptable to just have them as a pet necessarily. You know what I mean? Not that it's not, but in my opinion, you know, if you have them, you should really be working towards something with them, right? Because the need for it is there so much.
Yeah.
It's almost like the Boland's python. It's like it's at a certain point where they're expensive enough to be like a jewel of a collection, and so like there is that aspect to it. And then it's also expensive enough that it's hard to get a group sizable enough to be able to, you know, have some success with like varied bloodlines and stuff like that. So
right,
it makes it hard when you apply that price tag to them. Yeah, which is I think
gotta have deep pockets, man.
Yeah, it's the exact same reason Boland's aren't established. Like I don't.
Oh, 100%. If they were even half the price of what they are now,
I
guarantee you they probably wouldn't be fully established, but we'd see more captive bred ones for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to have somebody who's got enough time to dedicate to them and also be able to spend $10K out, because you're either a ball python breeder if you're spending $10K or you make a lot of money some other way, and you're probably working a lot. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting though. It's similar. It's funny because they're probably similar climates and everything too. So
yeah, I was just thinking that when you said Boland's python, they got to be fairly similar.
Yeah, these cloud forest animals are just problematic for some reason.
Yeah, there's got to be something. There's got to be something to it, though, man.
Yeah. But at least it seems like Abronia are breeding easier than Boland's, so that's good.
That's for sure. And they're not 10K a piece, which helps.
Right. I think the biggest key to breeding Abronia, honestly, is just getting that, you know, temp drop in that early winter time, you know, going into spring is just, I think the key to that is just making that happen to kind of get them triggered into that breeding mode. You know what I mean? Because I know, like, with the native alligator lizards that we have here in Arizona, those guys go through brumation, you know, for 2 to 3 months. Like Armin Herb Time showed on one of his videos, you know, he puts them in a mini fridge and brumates them and then brings them out for breeding. So I think obviously recreating that cycle is a big thing as far as reproducing the species.
So how do you do that in your room? Like how do you drop temps and stuff?
In my room, man, I'll be honest, me and my girlfriend, we got to tough it out a little bit. So like in the wintertime, you don't catch me running my heat all crazy, right? My heat is set at 66 degrees.
Oh, wow.
So, it's enough so that obviously like my desert tortoises and things like that I bring inside in the wintertime don't get too cold, but enough that I can close the vents off here in this room. And during the wintertime, it'll drop to, like I said, 50, 55 degrees in here. And it gets them that really cold nighttime drop. You know what I mean? So,
that's amazing. God bless your girlfriend, man.
No, she's
a trooper, man. She goes through a lot as far as, like I said, living in a cold house 24/7 and, everything. She's definitely a trooper. She's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Dude, my girlfriend gets cold at like 74 degrees in the house, so there's no way.
Yeah. See, like right now in the room, it's currently 67 degrees right now.
Damn. That's what I'm talking about. That's the perfect temp.
Not for me, man.
You're a warm guy?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not warm, but 60. Once it goes below 68, that 1 degree difference is huge, man.
Yeah. Once you get in the 60s, especially in a house, dude, 68 in a house is totally different than 68 outside. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible, dude. I walk into my house from being outside, and I'm like,
yeah, you gotta put a hoodie on.
I walk around in the morning, I wake up and I put on sweatpants and a hoodie, and that's how I go and, start waking up all the animals, turning on all the lights, things like that, because it's cold.
That's so funny, man.
We have to go back to something really quickly because you said you have desert tortoises, like actual like desert tortoises you're talking about. That's awesome, man.
So here in Arizona, we are legally allowed to keep one per adult per household. So, there's definitely people out there that breed them and have their male and female and have their little babies. And I don't agree with that. You know what I mean? So I have 2 boys. They don't fight at all. I never see any type of issues with them as far as territory goes. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're super, super cool. I love taking care of them, man. I go out and I step into their little enclosure in the backyard and, they come up to you and they'll eat a strawberry right out of your hand. And they love prickly pear fruit. They're really cool.
Nice.
That's so awesome, man. The whole, I guess, gopher tortoise, desert tortoise complex is definitely, it's never going to happen probably for me, but that's I just love North American herps and I love, turtles and tortoises, and I would love to keep those one day, man. They're awesome.
They're awesome, man. They're filled with personality and, honestly, I'll be outside. Like, I've got 3 dogs, right? So I have my big dogs and my little dog. And my little dog, she doesn't go outside with the big dogs because I just don't want her getting trampled when they're playing. Mm-hmm. So when I go outside and I take her to go to the bathroom, I go and I hang out in the tortoise enclosure and I just go and give them little butt scratches on their shells and things like that. And they do their little dance, They're cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. So I guess that goes into like, I mean, Brenden, unless you want to stay on Abronia.
No, you're good.
Yeah. Like what other herps are you keeping? I know we got leopard geckos. So if we want to talk leopard geckos for a second and then talk about
man, I specialize obviously in leopard geckos. That's kind of where the hobby started for me as a kid. I can't obviously credit a leopard gecko to being my first herp because actually when I was 2 years old, I had a water dog named Water Dog Willie. That my dad had gotten me from the lake. He was bait that we were using for fishing at Roosevelt Lake, and I just wouldn't let them use him. My dad said I threw like the biggest fit ever until they let me take him home. So I took that dude home and I had him for a couple of years, you know what I mean? And then obviously as I grew older, I wanted to go and pick out a pet from the pet store, and that's where the leopard gecko started. And, it's just kind of grown from there. Honestly, it turned from hobby to
business / hobby now, you know what I mean, which is cool. And it's fun because I love going to the reptile shows, man, and seeing people and meeting, you know, different friends, things like that. Like, for example, I'm hoping that I can get into an NARBC show so that I can go and meet Brenden.
Yeah,
soon,
man.
You know what I mean? And hang out and stuff. But yeah, you know, breeding leopard geckos has been awesome. And it's one of those things that I have to give leopard geckos a lot of credit, because without the leopard geckos, I wouldn't be able to reinvest into other projects and other animals that I do enjoy keeping. You know what I mean? So without those guys, I definitely couldn't do it.
So what morphs and stuff are you working with leopard geckos currently?
I personally specialize in the clown project stuff,
Yeah,
and like
buddy.
Black Knight and like Cypher, things like that. So that's mainly what you'll see me produce. Like Brenden said, you know, I'm always posting clowns, and him and I are in a group chat together called Clown Town that I created just for like little buddies of ours that are also breeding them, to send pictures so we can kind of stay up to date with each other and see like what we're all producing, things like that. But, you know, I've also been kind of working on some other stuff myself that I really haven't talked to anyone about. So, you know, since this is an Abronia dedicated podcast, I guess I'll go ahead and talk about it. But I've been looking for more of like simple recessives that are old school. So like Murphy's Patternless, Blizzard, things like that, that are no-known het that I can plug into other recessives as well, to try and create a couple world's firsts of my own. So there's some things that I've been working on that I won't talk about, you know, any too further, so I don't give it away.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been working in silence, that's for sure.
Love that,
man. That's awesome. Going back to the clowns, I have a funny story about the clowns. So the first time, so for context, I'm colorblind.
Okay.
That'll come into play here in a second. But the first time I came up, or the only time I've been up to see Brenden, but I went up to see Brenden, and he was showing me all his leopard geckos, and he was pulling out the clowns, and I was like, you know, they're cool, but I couldn't see the orange. I only saw, it was just all yellow to me, and I was like, you know, I've seen like 100 leopard geckos that look like this, you know, like
right,
a ton of them, whatever. So I was like, oh yeah, cool, man, whatever. And Brendan's like, okay, like I guess this guy doesn't get it.
For context, obviously I was geeking out. I was like, oh, someone finally wants to come and talk leopard geckos. So I'm like losing my mind showing him all these geckos. And Jack's just like, that's cool. Oh yeah, that one's okay. That one's nice. And in my head, I was like, what the fuck do you mean, man? Like these things are badass. And then like, go ahead and finish your story.
Yeah. So then we were on a call, like a FaceTime call a little bit later. And Brenden was showing some of the clowns again. And I was like, holy shit, man, what am I looking at? Because I could see, like, for some reason on the iPhone, I could see the orange patterns and everything.
No kidding.
Yeah, so it was a completely different animal than I had looked at in person. I was like, what am I looking at? Like, this thing's crazy. So now I get the clown hype. But before I was like, these are just the yellow leopard geckos.
You know, that's a really interesting point that you made, because that also makes me wonder how many other people out there that are colorblind as well that have seen them and just been like, whatever. You know what I mean? That's not anything crazy. So that's, you know, not only is that funny, but that's actually kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, it was a wild experience for me, man, when I saw them on but this is a different thing. So
I bet.
So
I wonder if it's like the color correction on the iPhone, like just somehow just hits your eye perfectly enough to see all the detail. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was honestly, like, reptiles aside, it was the first time I'd ever seen anything different, like from two different perspectives as a colorblind human. Like I had never seen something where I couldn't see what it actually looked like, and then seen it again where what it's actually supposed to look like. And it was
that's gotta be pretty trippy.
Yeah, dude. I thought I was losing my mind. It was it was really weird. So
oh man,
it's so funny, man.
I thought I'd throw that in there. But
hilarious.
Yeah. Okay, so like what other stuff? I know you were talking about chameleons and your horn lizards and stuff like that, or your horn dragons.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I've got Gonocephalus belli, which is like the Bell's angle-headed lizard. I've got Acanthosaura lepidogastro, which is going to be your dwarf mountain horn dragon. I've got Natal's mountain horn dragons.
Oh, wow.
Peach throat monitor.
Nice.
Asian water monitors, hog noses, ball pythons, rattlesnakes, box turtles,
Everything.
Strophrus. So like I have
Yeah.
Strophrus intermedius, Strophrus ciliaris, all those guys.
Nice.
Somniferous species, Underwoodosaurus. Honestly, quite a wide variety of
Yeah.
animals. I will say, I'm a lot more attracted to Abronia monitors and geckos specifically.
Yeah.
But there's also a couple animals that I have that I've gotten just because they're cool and I wanted it as a pet. Like my chameleon, for example. I have a nosy Mitsio panther chameleon. I don't really have any intentions of breeding him, but I just really, really wanted a chameleon because I hadn't kept one since I was probably 12 years old. And when I was 12, I was keeping veiled chameleons, you know what I mean? So the opportunity to get a panther, not only that, but a rare locality of it, came up at the pet store. And I was just like, you know what, man, throw another one of those onto my wholesale order. I want one.
That's
and
awesome.
I took them home.
That's amazing.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
I didn't know you had rattlesnakes.
Yeah, so I keep Western Diamondback rattlesnakes, the
Hell yeah.
Sidewinder, which I got that one from Yuma. And then I also have white speckled rattlesnakes. And those guys and my Western Diamondbacks are captive bred. And my Sidewinder was field collected by me out on a herping trip.
That's awesome.
Nice, man.
That's awesome. I was just down at one of our buddies' places. Shout out Gabe Schuler. And he's got some speckled rattlesnakes in this really cool enclosure. And I think he's got like 3 or 4 of them in there. And they're some of the coolest snakes ever, man. Like their patterns and stuff.
They're awesome, man. The ones that I have are really, really cool. And what's neat too is the guy that I got them from, I'll go ahead and give him a shout out. He's a really awesome guy. He's a customer that comes into my pet store all the time. I see him. I'm always getting him fuzzies. And, we just kind of developed a relationship and became good friends. And I had actually gotten one of his captive bred babies down from someone else. They had gifted it to me. So it was from him, obviously, but didn't directly come from him. And one day we're in my pet store and we just get to talking. And he tells me, he's like, oh, I was actually the one that produced that and gave that to so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, no kidding. How cool. And, I mentioned that I, would like to get a female in the future. And he literally showed up at my pet store a week later, brought me a female and was like, here you go, brother, and gifted it to me. And I was, obviously ecstatic because here in Arizona, the only legal way that you can get stuff like that is either when it's gifted to you by someone else or if you go out and collect it. And, as far as collecting goes with like the specs and stuff, it's really frowned upon, you know what I mean? Because where those guys are at is pretty special. So for this guy to come and give me one of those animals, it just, spoke volumes to me and really meant a lot. So you can definitely say that he gets hooked up on his feeders every week.
That's awesome.
So cool.
Well, I guess we should probably talk about the pet store then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brenden, you had some questions laid out for that.
Yeah, so I'm assuming it's your pet store, right? Like you're the owner, that's all you?
So I have business partners in the pet store as well. My business partner, Jacob, he's part of it. And then we also have another one named Katie as well. And it's a collaborative of the 3 of us that we've just been kind of doing.
So how did it come to be? How did it start?
So Jacob was the one that really ventured out and started the whole thing to begin with. He and I worked together at a pet store here in Tucson called Tropical Kingdom. And it was one of those things where Jacob's life just kind of took a weird turn and he needed to try something new. You know what I mean? So he did that. And then he reached out to me and wanted me to come in and help him and be a part of it and kind of, make it what we want it to be ultimately at our end goal, right? So that's how I got involved with that. Obviously, Jacob reached out to me and we talked business, made it happen. And then Katie was actually a customer of ours that, you know, we had gotten to know over some time, and her husband came in a lot. And it's kind of a sad story, unfortunately, but so I had sold them their 10th anniversary snake, right? They got a green tree python, and it was one of those things that it was like a really, really special thing, right?
Mhm.
Well, a week later, unfortunately, Dalton passed away. He was working on a job site installing an air conditioning unit, and the guy that was operating the crane arced him on a power line and fried his arms all the way up. So he died from potassium poisoning in his blood.
Holy shit.
And it was one of those things that, like, me and Jacob just, you know, we felt terrible, man. It was one of those, she had a bunch of kids, you know what I mean? And they were just really, really cool people. And Katie didn't know what she was going to do. She didn't want to go back to serving, things like that, right? So we told her, we were like, you know, come to the pet store and come work with us, and we'll make sure that your family never has to worry. You know what I mean? We'll take care of you guys and make sure that you're always good, right? Because Dalton, you know, they had their own business, the HVAC business, and with Dalton gone, that obviously can't continue. You know what I mean? So we wanted to make sure that Katie was taken care of, and obviously there were some financial things that go into that as well. It wasn't just like, here's a share of the business, there you go, you know what I mean? But now, you know, Katie's a part of it, and she's not going anywhere. So
that's so cool, man.
Yeah. And
that's
her kids also, her kids are in the shop three times a week, helping out, catching feeders, ringing people up on the register, stuff like that. So it's really cool. It's became kind of like a really tight-knit family thing for us.
That's
and
awesome.
honestly, that's the type of friendships that I love. So I couldn't be happier.
That's amazing. So what's the shop look like? Like, can you give us like kind of a mental picture of what it looks like?
So it's small. It's not anything too crazy. You walk in and you'll see there's like a shelf in the center, and then there's two aisles, right? One side you walk down has like all of our big melamine enclosures that are soon to be switched to PVC. And then the other side has like Exoterras and like front opening 20 gallons, things like that. And on the big side, obviously, you're going to see like our retics, our berms, monitors, bearded dragons, you know, anything that really is going to need and utilize that space. And then on the other side, you'll see ball pythons, king snakes, corn snakes, you know, kind of more basic stuff. And then at the front of the store, so on the front windows, you'll see all of our bioactive stuff. So like our dart frogs, our tree frogs, our Malaysian cat gecko pair, things like that. You know, anything that's going to have live plants and high humidity, you'll see right in that area. And then as you walk back, there's, you know, a little section that you can go through, and we have like all of our UVB lighting right there. So you can go through, see all of our UVB lighting. And then if you look to the left, you'll see like 3D printed products from a lady named Cassandra that's local to me here in Arizona. She brings us like all kinds of keychains and fidget spinners and like little things like that are animal related that the kids can get and like play with, you know? And then you keep going that way, and we have a big shelf that's going to be like all of our woods. So like cork bark, manzanita, grapevine, driftwood, anything like that, right? And then you keep walking, and we have our chameleon section. So all of our reptibreeze enclosures and things like that. And then we have a couple odd end things over there as well, like some tarantulas, scorpions, some beetles, stuff like that. And then you get to the front counter, and that's where we have like all of our inverts. So we have like a display case, obviously, where we have like our register and our computer, and all the inverts and isopods and springtails are going to be inside. And then we have the back room, and that's where we keep like roaches, crickets, rats, stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Nice,
so like I said, it's not too big of a store, but you know, it's enough. And the goal is eventually to expand, so that way we're not just reptiles, we can incorporate some other things, because we would like to get a small fish section as well, and even like some birds and things like that, because, you know, I'm sure you guys have heard him sitting here making noise this whole time. But I like birds a lot, and I've always had fun taking care of them and keeping them. So our goal eventually is to have like some Amazon parrots and some macaws and conures, things like that.
Hell yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So
Super
are
cool.
you guys like breeding your feeders and stuff like that, or are you guys purchasing them? Like,
No, so we try and source all of our stuff local. So like our dubia roaches, we buy from a company called Rio Verde Roaches out in Rio Verde, Arizona.
Nice.
We get like our mice come from a company called Pets Paradise, which is a wholesale company in Phoenix.
Nice.
And then like a lot of our animals too, we really try and source a lot of our stuff locally. Obviously, you know, I'll do wholesale orders from time to time to get kind of the more rare and unique things in. But like all of our ball pythons, all of our bearded dragons, crested geckos, leopard geckos are obviously produced by me. But, you know, everything like that is all going to come from a local breeder, which is really cool.
It's cool, man.
That's awesome.
Love that.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if all the leopard geckos in the shop are yours.
Yeah, so I have, you know, a few animals here at home that I use, and not that they're any less significant than any other animals I have, but I call them my like cheaper end animals, right?
Yeah.
And it's stuff that I'm beyond happy to sell in my pet store for $30 to $50, right?
Yeah.
As juveniles. So,
Gotcha.
you know, there's things like that. But occasionally I've brought in a black knight before, or like every now and then I'll bring in like a really nice white and yellow tangerine trimper or something like that, just to kind of get a little bit more attention on them, you know what I mean? But yeah.
That's awesome.
Nice, man. How are the I'll just not to interrupt you there, Jack. I just have one question. How are the cat geckos doing?
They're doing really good, man. So we got another clutch from them, but unfortunately it wasn't fertile. We're still trying to figure out how to get them to get fertile, because the male and the female are together and they're doing it. So I don't know.
Same, brother. Same. I don't know. I got that one clutch, and then I just.
There's got to be like some sort of special little thing that we got to like sprinkle on the eggs or something to get them to be fertile. I don't know.
I know for me, when I got the clutch I have now, what really helped was keeping the humidity at like 70% at the lowest 24/7. That seemed to really help. But other than that, dude, I wish I had something for you, but I have no fucking clue. I really don't.
I know what you mean, bro.
I know we talk about it a lot, but I'm still trying to really pinpoint down what the hell they need to. Because like you said, like you put them together. Like I have a pair together now, and they cuddle together. They're next to each other all the time, but I don't see anything.
I'm almost contemplating leaving the next set of eggs in the enclosure with the adults.
Same. Yep. I think I'm gonna do the same thing.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Because I'm at 4 clutches now with no results. So
this is my 4th clutch also, so I understand. And this is the only one I've had that's went any sort of distance, and they're still looking good, but it's like, man.
Come on, guys. They breed like crested
geckos, man.
Yeah, they breed like crested geckos. I forgot. You just put them together. That's all you got to do.
Right.
But no, if I hatch these things, I'm gonna send you one just because I need somebody else to help me out in this thing, man.
Heck yeah, man, I'm down.
Yeah, I'm gonna hook you up.
Like I said, I haven't quite figured it out myself, but I'm gonna try just about anything until I do. So
we'll figure it out, man. We'll get there.
Totally.
It's part of the fun. It's figuring it out.
Definitely, it creates a bit of a challenge and it makes you think. So
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
half the goal of the hobby for sure. It's just
definitely
something to think about. So
I have next year I should have 3 breedable females. So I'm hoping we get something. I don't know.
Hey, that's pretty good odds right there, man. If you don't get something out of that, I'd be pretty upset.
Yeah, and then I don't know if we've brought this up in the podcast or not, but Ashley from Northern Lights hit me up a few weeks ago.
I think we have.
And I'm getting a wild caught pair of dorsalis through her Connect in Germany. So they should be here next month. And I believe that it's an adult pair. So I'll have 2 pairs of those now too. So I'm hoping, dude. I have like a room full of these things. I'm gonna figure it out. It's gonna
Heck
happen.
yeah. It's bound to at some point.
Yeah,
If you crack the code with one species, the next should be just as easy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm hoping. But I plan on making like a write up on this stuff once I really figure it out. So, because we ain't gatekeeping over here, man.
Right? Yeah, we're not about that.
No, I'm letting everything out.
Totally.
So, what's kind of like the scene in Arizona as far as reptiles? Like, everyone's kind of familiar with their own like reptile scene, but it's interesting to hear what it's like locally.
That's a really good question that you ask because it's very interesting, right? I feel like in any scene, I guess you would say, there's definitely drama, right? Mm-hmm. That's to be found anywhere. But, one thing that I find cool about the Arizona reptile community is there's not a lot of gatekeeping here. You know what I mean? The people that you do connect with that are knowledgeable are usually pretty willing to share that knowledge with you. You know what I mean? Like, for example, my vet, right? This dude's written books. He's, this really well-known guy. And I'm just this small-time little leopard gecko breeder that's coming to him, and now we're friends. You know what I mean? So, that's one thing that I really do like about it. And, the other part is I've gotten to meet so many people close to me that I really, really enjoy, like, talking to and being around. Like, for example, Joe from Wild Card Geckos. That dude's probably, like, one of, if not my favorite fellow hobbyist here in Arizona. You know what I mean? Just because Joe's such a cool, down-to-earth person, and he's humble. You know what I mean? He doesn't claim to know everything. And he doesn't think that he's better than anyone. And those are the kind of people that I really like.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We need more of that for sure.
Definitely.
It's funny.
Another thing to add, too, is my hometown reptile show is pretty slept on, guys. If you've ever been considering coming to vend an Arizona reptile show, come and vend the Tucson Reptile Show. And if anyone ever wants, to reach out to me and get the info to the promoter to contact him directly to vend that one, I strongly recommend it because, not only is it massive, it's a really big show, but it's got a pretty decent variety. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're obviously going to find your ball pythons and your leopard geckos, things like that, but there's also a lot of really cool keepers and breeders out here, like Dustin Grand from Geckosphere or Alex Wing of Pandas Fauna. You know what I mean? Those guys are also working with a ton of really neat species, and they, they're vending at the Tucson show every single year. You know what I mean? So it's definitely one I wouldn't count out if you've ever considered vending in Arizona, and I would strongly recommend vending it.
That's awesome.
And there's time to sign up for this coming up year if you guys want to. It's in October, 4th and 5th.
Oh yeah.
If anyone's looking, we'll have some details, I guess, down below in the show notes. So I'll hit you up after, Thomas, for some of that.
Yeah, definitely, man.
That's always interesting to me, is just like seeing the different shows. Like when I went up to visit Brenden, we went to Tinley, and that was like a whole wild experience to me. It was kind of a gecko show, if you ask me, but
the best kind of show.
But like I'm in South Carolina, so our biggest show down here is Columbia, and that's really just known for gaboon vipers and sunrise monocle cobras or something. So
gotcha.
It's always interesting to hear about what other shows are out there, because it's really our scene here is not great. So
that something that you might appreciate then, being that that's the majority of what you see there, is here in Arizona. We legally can't own any of that stuff. So you've got one booth, the Phoenix Herp Society, that comes in and sets up their educational booth. You know what I mean? And then the rest of the stuff that we have is all non-venomous, obviously, because we can't sell it, So it might be a good variety here for you to come check out.
Yeah. It's Brenden. It sounded like we're in Arizona.
Dude, I'm down to go to Arizona.
Let's do it. We're going to do some herping.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Herping in too. Absolutely. I'd love to go see some rattlesnakes.
Yeah.
That'd be badass. That sounds like a good time to me.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love Arizona, man. I've been there a few times.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd you do in Arizona?
My dad used to drive truck, dude. I've been everywhere.
Okay.
Heck yeah.
Just Brenden.
Nothing fun. It is just kind of like a drive through, stay at a truck stop, leave. But Arizona's cool looking. I liked it.
No frolicking in the desert for you?
No frolicking, no, man.
I'm picturing a
places
large
to be.
bearded man running about in the desert, and it's a wonderful scene in my head.
Well, I was like 10, so my dad would have been the large bearded man running around.
You definitely had a beard at 10. Come on.
I did, yeah, you're right.
That's amazing.
That's
Awesome.
hilarious.
So when you go vend a show, like, are you bringing the whole shop with you, or is it just your leopard geckos, or like, kind of what's your...
What we do is, since I have partners in the shop, and since, the leopard geckos and everything at home is obviously myself,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I don't do it ever collabed or combined, because in my opinion, it gets too messy when you do things like that. It's best to keep it separate,
Mhm.
And so with that being said, what we'll do is, like, we usually get a huge end cap for the store, or like a big booth, and then for me, I'll either get like a normal booth or a corner. And if we can, we'll try and put them next to each other, so obviously we can talk and hang out, things like that. But if not, it's always known that Thomas has his own booth and has to work his own booth. He can't,
Right.
So we have the other people, our employees, volunteers, things like that, pick up the slack, right? And, truthfully, my business partners are able to manage perfectly fine, you know what I mean? And the nice thing about that is, like, they get it as well, because they understand that I'm a breeder, you know what I mean? Jacob, he also used to breed, but he doesn't do it as much anymore. He more so has fun with the little farm that he's building. Over the past couple months, he's gotten a few goats, a pig, and we actually have 2 sheep coming this next
Nice.
week. So that'll be cool. I'll be sure to post about them on my story when they get brought
That's
to the store.
hilarious.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, do you guys close the shop when you guys do a show?
So yeah, sometimes we will close the shop, but thankfully, like I said, the way that things are there, it's a very tight-knit family type situation. And as crazy it may sound, Jacob's ex-wife is, a huge help to us, because when we have to go and vend shows, or like when Jacob and I have to go and do a birthday party and Katie is sick, or Katie can't be there, or something like that, right? His ex-wife, Audrey, will come in and pick up the slack. So Usually what's happened is we'll be at the reptile show and Audrey will be at the store. And honestly, that's like the best case scenario, because you wouldn't necessarily think so, but so many people leave the reptile show and go to the shop to go.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's interesting to me. So, like, do you guys have like a separate like warehouse or something that you keep all your your show supplies and stuff, or like?
Oh man, I wish we were rich. We've got a garage, baby.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. But you've got like like your show material, and then you keep stuff in the shop. Interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we, the nice thing is we can pack it all into the big tote bins from like Home Depot, things like that, right? And then our banner, we have it hung up in the shop, but we'll roll it up and, pack it away, things like that. And then as far as like bringing stuff goes, I mean, we bring everything, man. We bring enclosures, we bring bioactives that are carved out, ready to be planted and have animals put in them. We bring jumping spider enclosures, we bring fruit fly cultures, we bring, little cups of red runners and dubias, things like that. Like literally anything that we can fit on the table, we make sure it's there. And obviously, we bring a ton of animals as well. But when we're at the shows, we want to make that presence that, we're your one-stop shop. You can buy your crested gecko from us, and you can also buy the Pangea from us as well. You know what I mean? And the enclosure, right?
Yeah.
So, that's pretty much what it looks like.
Yeah. I always love that when shops set up at a reptile show, because I just feel like you can never have enough supplies with the amount of animals that are going home that probably people don't have plans for. So it's always probably better to have more of those, supply focused, and then also you can get the animal right there as well. So it's everything all at once. So,
definitely.
It's definitely a smart business practice.
Yeah. Do you guys ever like run into that where there's, you've got somebody who's like, oh, I just, bought this animal and I have no idea like how to set it up, or, anything like that?
So It's funny you say that because that's actually how I ended up with my Bell's angle-headed lizard. We were at the reptile show and we had someone come up to our booth and, is very irresponsible if you ask me, but they pretty much were like, hey, I just bought this 20 minutes ago. I have no idea what the hell it is, no idea how to take care of it or what to do with it. And the guy won't give me my money back. You know what I mean? So
Jeez.
I let him pick he got a centipede. He got a centipede off of our table and then he gave me the lizard and I took it home and I've had him ever since. You know what I mean?
Wow.
That's
So
wild.
it definitely does happen,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is, people come that were at Petco and they grabbed the flyer at Petco that got put out there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things like that. So it not only attracts hobbyists, but it's also going to attract people that are also very new to the field itself. And, we definitely do get a ton of questions like, hey, what even is this? Or how do we take care of this? Or I have no idea what I'm doing here. Can you walk me through step by step? You know what I mean? And the reason that the Bell's angle-headed lizard came home with me was, one, it's awesome looking and I really wanted it. And two, because I knew that I'd be able to bring it home and kind of dedicate what it needed care-wise to it. And rather than just reselling it at the pet store to someone that potentially is going to buy it and not know what it is, I can have it at home, breed it potentially, and then sell those babies on Morph Market in the future where they'll end up in, good hands.
Yeah, for sure.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's almost like we talk a lot about Morph Market being like a virtual show, or that's like the concept of it is like it's a virtual reptile show that you can attend at any point, but it's so different because reptile shows, you get all these people, which is great. You get all these people who are, really new to the hobby or just new to reptiles generally. And they're like, oh, there's a reptile show in town. Like, let's go check it out. Something fun to do with the kids or whatever. Whereas on Morph Market, it seems like you got to be kind of in the know to know about it. So you get more of the advanced keepers on there.
Well, another thing with it too that I always tell people is because I hear from a lot of people that they sell on Morph Market or Instagram, but they've never vended a show before or they don't vend shows. And the biggest thing I always tell people is, you're not going to convey the same message through a text message on Morph Market as you are as me standing in front of you, putting an animal in your hands and talking to you about it. You know what I mean? That passion and that excitement doesn't get delivered as well as it does, in person. And I think that's a huge part to not only building your reputation, but building your name in our hobby and kind of making yourself known, right? Because people are going to remember that friendly face. They're not going to remember that text message that got sent to them from Tucson's Finest Leos. You know what I mean?
Right.
But, if I'm standing there talking to them, putting a gecko in their hands, educating them, things like that, it's going to be more of a memorable moment for them. And, when they might not be getting an animal right then and there, but when they think about it in the future, they're going to be like, you know what? I want to reach out to that dude that was really cool to me and talk to me about it. You know what I mean? So
awesome.
Shows are important for sure.
Yeah. I agree.
It's cool to have that perspective too. I don't know if I've had a long form conversation with anyone who's vended a show. So interesting to hear that perspective on it.
Definitely.
Yeah. I also you always kind of think about shows, especially around here, is like people like it's the weekend warrior kind of thing where it's like you're vending every show up and down the East Coast and it's everyone's driving around probably in a bad mood because they got to work a full week and so it's interesting hearing your perspective. Like how many shows are you guys doing a year, do you think?
So, I mean, the reptile store alone only does Tucson, right? Because that one's the easiest one for us, when it comes to taking a lot of enclosures and the supplies and things like that, it becomes really hard. And unfortunately, we just don't have the money for a massive Sprinter van or something like that could fit it comfortably for us to take it across country, right? Yeah. But here in Tucson, a couple truckloads is no problem for us. Gotcha. As far as me personally with the leopard geckos, this year I haven't fully decided yet. I might be trading in my little race car and getting in a truck we'll see. But the goal for me is to make it, is all around as much as possible, right? So like I've done Arizona, California, New Mexico, things like that. But I'd like to hit Florida. I'd like to hit Chicago, New York, that side of the country where no one knows me or who I am other than maybe on social media, you know what I mean? Because here in Arizona, I'm pretty well known throughout like the Facebook groups and things like that, right? Like I'm the leopard gecko guy. Everyone knows that. But, like I said, out there, no one knows me. So I can go there and I'm a fresh face to everyone. And it's, like I said, just going to build my clientele and the people that support me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to come do Daytona, man.
I'd love to, brother. That one would be really, really cool. The biggest thing for me is just figuring out how I'm going to get all my animals there. But, as long as I've got, like, for example, like if I were to go and do Tinley, I could feel comfortable sending Brenden all my animals and then driving there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And having like all my show supplies, like my tables and my banners and stuff like that in the back, you know what I mean? Which would be a lot less stressful for me because then I'm not having to worry about the animals and stuff.
Yeah.
We got NARBC in St. Louis too. Just saying. I'm 15 minutes away.
I want to go to the NARBC St. Louis also.
It's I went last year so this is like the third or fourth year they had it here. I went the first year, and with it being the first year, it was small, right? But I went last year, dude. It's actually pretty big. It's really gaining some traction. Yeah, it's really cool.
That's awesome.
I feel like those guys just know how to grow a show. Like
it's insane, dude. They're so good at it.
Yeah, I was just seeing the videos of Darlington that just happened. Like, I think it was this weekend.
Yeah,
it's massive, and I don't remember like from seeing videos of it previously it being at that big on that scale. So
yeah, it's crazy
what they're doing.
Yeah, what I like about the show here is it's very much like Daytona, where the aisles are really wide.
Yeah.
So like Tinley, you're like butts to nuts all day long. It's just packed with people.
Yeah.
But this one, you can actually kind of breathe a little bit. It's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Daytona's great, man. I can't wait for this year.
I know I'm gonna miss it again. So bummed. Next year, though, we're coming next year.
Yeah.
We're gonna bring the baby.
Like I was saying, Thomas, like with the East Coast shows being the way they are, it's like everyone on the East Coast makes the pilgrimage to Daytona every year, regardless of where you're at on the East Coast. It's like you go down to Daytona because it's the only East Coast
show.
Yeah, it's the only southeastern, U.S. show that is like worth anything, So
that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's a fun time, man.
It's a great time too. It being right on the beach is like that's a big key too. So
heck yeah.
It's awesome. So
that's awesome.
Awesome. I don't know, Brenden, did you have any closing questions here?
No, I think we hit them all, man.
Yeah, I think we did. I think this was a good show.
Yeah, it was fun.
Things. I think with the Abronia too, there's like even just as what is known currently, like it's an evolving subject, so there's always more to talk about them. We mentioned Savannah a lot. We definitely want to get her on the show at some point, and maybe we can have you on there as well, Thomas, and we can kind of have a roundtable discussion about them in a future episode as well. So
definitely. And, like I was saying, Savannah and Ollie, those guys, they've been a really huge help to me as far as just answering questions and, being able to kind of compare what works for them to what's working for me and kind of incorporate little things that they're doing into my care as well.
Yeah.
And like you said, Savannah and Ollie, those would be some valuable people to have on the show for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Same with Bubba and Angelo, Small World Reptiles. Unfortunately, I don't think Angelo still works with them, but he's another really cool guy as well.
Awesome.
Hell yeah, man.
We'll have to have a follow-up discussion on them for sure.
Oh, yeah. They're so cool.
Yeah.
I already won them, so this is just going to fucking make it even worse.
I kind of want to avoid having the conversation, so I don't want them more.
Right? I will say, now that you're like interested in them and excited about them in a way, if you ever see one at a show, check it out, see if they'll let you hold it, or if you have a friend that has one. And I'm telling you, man, the second you hold the animal, you're gonna
Oh,
say,
yeah.
"Fuck it, I'll sell everything and buy all these right now."
That's how I am too, man. That's all it takes.
Literally.
That's how it was with the cat geckos, man. I held one I found one at a local show randomly, and I've been like researching them forever. Never saw them for sale, and this random local guy had a male, and he's like, "You want to hold it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." And he put it in my hands. I was like, "Dude, I'm so like, give me the deli cup. He's coming home."
See,
Heck
but
yeah.
now the problem, Brenden, is the only thing you'll have to sell is the cat geckos. If you,
Yeah, that's not happening.
he's gonna have to grow.
Brendan's gonna be keeping the cat geckos for a while,
Oh yeah, they're not going anywhere.
right?
That's my
Awesome.
jam, dude.
Awesome.
Heck yeah.
All right, guys. Well, with that, I guess I'll wrap it up. I appreciate everyone who's been listening so far, listening to the podcast and everything. We really appreciate everyone. Thomas, really appreciate you coming on and spending the time with us. We all, we're reptile keepers. Time is super valuable because we're always busy. So really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Do you have any links you want to plug? Any Instagrams you want to plug for people to go follow you?
Of course, man. Anytime. Really the only Instagrams I'd like to plug, obviously Tucson's Finest Dragons is the page that I've recently created dedicated to Abronia. But, I really just want to emphasize on the shout out to Savannah, Perfect Hue Herps, and Ollie, Wholesome Herps LLC. Those guys have been huge in my success this far with the genus. And, without them as friends and as a support system that I can also turn to ask questions and advice and opinions, things like that, I don't think I'd be doing as good as I currently am with them. So I definitely want to give those guys a shout out and make sure they're plugged in for sure, because they deserve it and a huge help.
Absolutely. And we'll put all those links in the show notes as well. So awesome. Well, with that, guys, thank you very much. This has been episode number 8 with Thomas Probst and Brenden. And Brenden, anything else you want to say before we close it out?
No, I think we covered everything, man. We definitely appreciate your time, Thomas. We've been like we said in the beginning, we've become buddies over the past little while here, man. So I definitely appreciate you coming on and chatting with us. And we'll have you back on for the little round table we plan on doing.
Sounds good. And of course, brother, anytime, I'm really honored that you reached out to me and you wanted me to be a part of the podcast that you and Jack are starting up. It's really cool. I'm loving what you guys are doing, and you already know, man, I'm a supporter. So
yeah, man.
I'm happy to be here for sure.
We appreciate you, dude.
I appreciate you guys as well.
Awesome. Well, everyone have a good night, and we'll see you next weekend or next week.
Sweet. Sounds good.